It was a night like any other, or at least, that's what I told myself. The house was quiet, save for the occasional creak of the old wooden floor beneath my pacing feet. Midnight had come and gone, yet Hannah, my wife, was still not home. I wanted to believe there was nothing wrong. She had mentioned a work dinner earlier, brushing it off as a routine event. But something about the way she said it, the forced casualness, the slight hesitation, lingered in my mind like a bad taste. I checked my phone. No messages. No missed calls. Just silence. The clock on the wall ticked away the seconds with agonizing precision. My unease deepened, curling in my stomach like a living thing. Then, at almost 2 a.m., I heard it, the unmistakable sound of a car pulling into the driveway. My heartbeat quickened. Relief? Dread? I wasn't sure which was stronger. The front door creaked open, and she stepped inside. Her heels clicked softly against the hardwood floor as she fumbled with her coat, her movements jerky, unsteady. And that's when I turned on the lights. She froze. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The only sound was the distant hum of the refrigerator and the ticking clock on the wall. Her eyes were wide, her face pale as if she'd seen a ghost. "Late night?" I asked, my voice eerily calm. I leaned back in my chair, a glass of scotch resting in my hand. My gaze never left hers. She swallowed hard. "I told you, it was a work dinner." Her voice wavered just slightly, but I caught it. I caught everything. "Is that what we're calling it now?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. I took a slow sip, letting the silence stretch between us. Funny, work dinners don't usually leave lipstick stains on a man's collar. Her face went deathly pale. Instinctively, her hand flew to her lips, brushing against the same crimson shade now betraying her. The room felt smaller. The air heavier. "Daniel, don't." I cut her off sharply, setting my glass down with deliberate care. I stood slowly, my movements controlled, but my mind was a storm. She took a step back, as if she could physically retreat from what was coming. "Don't insult me by pretending there's an explanation I'd believe," I said, my voice low, steady. "Who is he?" She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. Nothing. And that silence spoke louder than any confession ever could. "I made a mistake," she finally whispered, tears pooling in her eyes. "It meant nothing, Daniel. It was stupid and I regret it." "Please?" "It meant nothing?" I repeated, a hollow laugh escaping my lips. "Do you think that makes it better? That it was so meaningless, you were willing to throw away everything for it?" Tears streaked her perfectly applied makeup. "Daniel, please, it was a mistake. We can fix this. I love you." That word struck like a blade. Love wasn't sneaking around in the dark. Love wasn't coming home at 2 a.m. smelling like someone else's cologne. Love was trust. And she had shattered it. I grabbed my jacket from the coat rack. "Where are you going?" she asked, panic lacing her voice. I didn't look back. "Don't wait up." I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I drove aimlessly through the empty streets, passing familiar places. Our favorite diner, the park where we once walked hand in hand, the coffee shop where we had our first date. Memories of better days taunted me at every turn. The betrayal cut deep. But by the time the sun began to rise, the pain had started to shift. It hardened into something colder. Sharper. Resolve. If Hannah thought she could treat our marriage like a disposable convenience, she had another thing coming. I returned home to a silent house. She was either asleep or pretending to be. Either way, it didn't matter. I had plans to make. For the next few weeks, I played the role of the understanding husband. I told her I wanted to work things out, that we could rebuild. I went to therapy with her, listened as she cried, nodded as she poured out her guilt. All the while, I was preparing my revenge. First, I gathered evidence, texts, emails, photos. Everything. Hannah had been careless, assuming I wouldn't look too closely. She underestimated me. Next, I contacted my lawyer. Fortunately, I had always been smart with finances. Most of our assets were in my name. And thanks to our prenup, I was in a solid position to protect what was mine. Then came the final piece of the puzzle. The most satisfying part. I found him. A smug, married coworker. Rather than confronting him directly, I did something better. I anonymously sent every piece of evidence to his wife. Let her deal with him. And then I waited. The reckoning came sooner than expected. One evening, I suggested to Hannah that we throw a small dinner party with friends. She was eager, desperate to prove her commitment. She had no idea what was coming. As guests arrived, she played the perfect hostess, laughing, smiling, acting as if everything was fine. I watched her, a quiet smirk playing on my lips. Midway through dinner, I stood and raised my glass. A toast, I said, to new beginnings. Hannah smiled, raising her own glass. And to honesty. Her smile faltered. Just for a second. Here, here, she forced out. Actually, I continued, setting down my glass. I have something to share. A little story about love and betrayal. The room fell silent. Hannah's eyes widened in panic. Daniel, she whispered, barely breathing. I held up a hand. Let me finish. I turned to our guests. It turns out the woman I've spent the last 10 years of my life with has been keeping secrets. While I was building a life for us, she was out, exploring other options. Gasps rippled through the room. Hannah looked like she wanted to disappear. But don't worry, I added, turning back to her. I've taken care of everything. The divorce papers are ready. The assets are secured. And your little secret? Well, it's not a secret anymore. I smirked. Oh, and Matt sends his regards. Or maybe he doesn't. He's dealing with his own fallout right now. Hannah's face crumpled. Tears fell freely. But I felt nothing. She had made her choices. Now she had to live with them. The party ended in stunned silence. Guests left quickly. Hannah begged, pleaded. But I was done listening. When she finally packed her bags and walked out, the house felt peaceful. It wasn't the ending I had imagined for our marriage. But it was the one she had chosen. And as I sat alone in the quiet, I realized something important. I was free. Free to rebuild. Free to start over. Free to find someone who valued loyalty and honesty as much as I did. And this time, I wouldn't settle for anything less.